A boring game, no value, no soul, also known as Golf Fever. A tiny mobile mini-golf game where you drag a ball and drop it into a hole. This is the game that I made in high school as my research project. And honestly, at that time I was proud. I had finished and published a full game. But the numbers weren't good. And deeper than that, something was missing. And no, it wasn't marketing. So, what was the real problem? Well, the game just wasn't fun. It broke nothing new, it didn't stand out, and worst of all, I knew it. Good afternoon, I'm Chenos, recent computer science graduate, and this is my final project, where I saved Go Fever using game user research. When I chose computer science, I was looking for three things: learn how to turn ideas into reality, improve at managing projects, and most importantly, make games that are actually fun. But near the end of my degree, I started asking myself, sure, I code better now, I know more, and I manage better, but is that enough to make a fun game? The answer is no. I didn't just need the skills, I needed a tool to understand what makes the players connect with the game. And that tool was game user research. Game user research is a set of data driven techniques that don't guarantee success but massively reduce your chances of making a boring, frustrating game. And for this project, I set it two goals: to apply different game user techniques to redesign Go Fever, but also to evaluate which ones are actually feasible for small teams. So in the future, I can keep working on that and improving, and also for you guys. So, what's game user research, right? Or GUR? So, GUR uses empirical methods to understand how real players interact with the game, with the goal of improving the user experience, or UX. And in games, user experience covers everything, from the first step to the understanding of the controls to the long term feeling the game leaves. And this includes two main things: usability. Can the player play it? Are menus and controls intuitive? Do they understand what they have to do? And once that is completed, you will say, okay, now that they can play it, do they want to play it? Is the gameplay enjoyable, balanced? Does the difficulty feel fair? And here I was like, wow, I didn't thought about these two ideas, right? And in fact, game user research is not that explored and is especially used for bigger games like triple A's. But I think that for the scope of my project, my aim was to apply those big ideas into smaller projects. And also, unlike the traditional user research, which is for applications, here you can see the difference. So for when you are working with an application, your main focus is to facilitate the user a task. And when we're talking about game user research, since it has the game in front, now the main focus is entertainment. So it doesn't have to be everything efficient in order to make the game entertaining. For example, if you go to YouTube, what is the main task? To facilitate the user watch videos. So everything is tailored so the user can find new and fresh content and view it, right? And get entertained, right? Which is a second option, second thing. But in video games, sometimes things doesn't have to be efficient. You don't have to log in and immediately get the best things. You have to grind, right? And grinding is not efficient. It's some extra steps that you have to do. But that is entertainment. So that's the main difference between these two. And we're focusing on the game user research, the entertainment one. Here you can see a table that was extracted from the reference textbook of game user research, and it shows how game user research can be integrated to every phase of development. And here the key message is that game user research is not the final step, is not the thing that you do at the end of the project. It's something that is continuous and active part of the project. And of course, this table it's not a guideline. It's neither a recipe because at the end every game has its own needs. For example, in this case, we were working on a remaster of a game, so the scope or the adjustment techniques are different. Okay, so how did I make this project? This is a slide that you have to explain for the final degree project, but here I'm going to make a little, well, a short version explanation. So I have chosen indie-friendly tools that are powerful, but also cost-efficient and practical. I use then the Agile workflow with a Scrum and with the Kanban board in order to not only visualize the whole prioritization of tasks and well of theme of tasks, but the tasks in itself. And this took around 10 iterations at the end of the project of 2 weeks, which each iteration it's basically 2 weeks of working in a defined theme of tasks. And those 2 weeks, I separated them into minimum viable products. And in order to explain this better, I'm going to use a pan analogy. So the first MVP is the seed or rooting. Here, a seed represents the idea. Nothing happens until you plant them and help them grow. This stage defines the core mechanics and foundations of the game. And once you have that defined, the next step is to add the supporting stick or the guiding MVP. So just like an ivy plant grows in every direction if it has no support, and the moment you put a support stick in the middle, he will start to grow around that stick. The idea of this MVP is the same. We're going to use game user research as the supporting stick to guide us into the right decision and direction the game should go. And once that is defined, so we know what seed we want to plant, we know what is the support that it will help the seed grow in the right direction. Okay, the next step is just to grow into this direction, right? So the first minimal viable product. Here we define the foundation. And what was the foundation in this case? Since it was a remaster and the previous game was about a minigolf, the seed in this case is also a minigolf. Then we have the nutrients, which is what part is going to make money so I can keep investing on this project and it gets better. And in this case, it's the shop where you can buy cosmetics and players can pay to get premium cosmetics and then I can get funds. And finally, we have the flower. So now that you know what is the seed, what is going to um, feed the seed, you have to know what is the output or that thing that will make the players be attracted to your game. And in this case, I will say it's the flower, which is map creation and sharing. And this result or this conclusion, it doesn't comes from nowhere. It comes from a set of research. So in the first phase of MVP, game user research, you have to do a set of things. And the first step was related to ideation. So what does the new remaster brings? So all the visions that I couldn't do in the first version, I wanted to apply in the new version. And that can be summarized into three main points: map creation and sharing, multiplayer, and pets with the skills. Then, once I have defined this, I later added a scope in order to define how big or until where I wanted to reach in order to make the realistic launch, right? And in the process of that, after the ideation, I will do the different research. So I make market research, benchmarking competitors, and SWOT analysis. So here, market research was just going to Statista, checking some information, and then based on that information, I took some actions like the strategy of monetization. Then, using the benchmarking competitors, I go to Google Play, I research and gather all the information that are publicly available, and also tested the competitors of the same idea, a mini golf. And after getting all that information and making the right analysis, I summarize everything into actionable insights. And there, related to these actionable insights, I have the SWOT analysis, which showed that the advantage that I had was the map creation and sharing feature. Because, okay, multiplayer, lots of games has that. Pets with a skill, also a thing. But how about map creation and sharing in a mini golf game? Well, that was an area or a feature that was not that explored in mobile phone. So in computer you have Golf It. And if it's not mini golf, you have Geometry Dash or Mario Maker. But there was none about mini golf. So here I have found an opportunity. So now that we found this opportunity, we wanted to tailor a product in order to benefit from this, right? But before that, we decided to make a prototype of the core features of the game. And here it's when we started to apply the guiding MVP, right? We are adding the stick in order to guide where the product is going to go. And the first technique was to apply heuristics, which are basically a set of evaluations based on a description that will help you define if the game is going to the right direction or not. Here I applied heuristics for more efficient usability things, which is Nielsen, and then I apply it more related to gameplay because I have both, right? Because in a game you have the part about playing the game, and then you have the part about being able to play the game, right? And being able to play the game is a task. So that's why I differentiated these two, right? Playability, being able to play it, and usability, no, sorry, usability, being able to play it, and playability, wanting to play it. And here I get the first set of feedback based on these heuristics or evaluations, right? And the results are that the text was unclear, the navigation was inconsistent, I had a lot of bad button placements, and major control problems that I will show later into screenshots, okay? And the next step after the evaluation of heuristics, I applied usability tests, which are a more expensive, well, time-consuming technique, which involves defining scenarios and real users, and then you get real feedback. And here, the different scenarios were, well, of course, the onboarding, where you have the tutorial, the first mini golf course, and then the edit and sharing maps, the key or the flower of the game. But aside of edit and sharing those maps, you want to also be able to search and play those shared maps, right? But in order to edit and share those maps, you need an account. So sign up and log in. And then finally, in order to being able to continue working in this project in the future, you need the shop purchases, right? So after making all that usability test, I reached into some conclusions. And that's when we go to the final minimum viable product of this project, which was growth. So based on the results, I refined the game, I fixed problems, and I added new content and applied a visual style. And now we're going to go with the flashy things. So this was the tutorial before. So as you can see, here the main issues were that we have a bad button placement and nobody was following the tutorial. So the thing is that if you imagine you have a phone when you hold it like this part of your fingers is going to cover what you see. So you couldn't see the next and previous button. Some people, they just ignore the tutorial, right? And that's a problem because they're not going to follow the tutorial and they won't know what are the whole capabilities of the actions you can do, right? What is the new version? So as you can see, the first thing you can notice is the visual art style is improved because I applied the art style because the previous one was just a prototype. Then I moved the buttons of the right to the center so you now can see it. And also instead of having that manually clicked in the sense of you have to click the next in order to go to the next step of the tutorial. Now it's automatic. If you make the action, you will go direct to the next tutorial step. So as you can see now it's better, right? Okay, another problem, aiming. So before aiming was a hassle because the shot power, the feedback, the feeling was not great. They said that they didn't have like control of the ball, that the shot was too long, that they have to wait too long between shots, that it was hard to control the shot power, etc., etc. And here we have the new version. So the new version, the first thing I added is to cancel the shot. So before you could cancel the shot, but it was not that intuitive. But now you see that you have this red circle. So if you put the finger inside the red circle, it's going to cancel, right? It makes sense. It's red. And then outside the area is the range of shoot. And then you have this label indicating the shoot power. So you can now say, okay, I'm going to shoot 100%, 1%, 50% of 60%, right? So now you have more control. And aside of that, I improved the physics. So the game, instead of the ball bouncing a lot and then going really, really slow before being able to shoot again, it now bounces a lot, like the same, but it goes faster for the next shot. So you're not always waiting for the ball to stop. Okay, how about the editor? So of course, the editor was one of the most important features, right? And here the first thing you notice is that it's kind of plain and lame because it has no visual style. A lot of people complained about that, even though the scenario was not about anything about giving feedback of visuals, because that was not the scope, right? The scope was just to create a map, but either way, they criticized the art style, which, well, it is what it is. And then they also said that it was not that intuitive when drawing the items. And here we have the after version, which I hope it's not that ugly, okay? And as you can see now, everything is more clear, right? And another thing I added is that when you start drawing things, you go into drawing mode. So that means that you're not going to see oops, this view where you have the different items and control in which hole you start to play, but you can only focus on drawing the things, right? And I added a small camera in the left in order to show what's under your finger, because otherwise you cannot see what's under your finger, and that can be a problem. And also a cancel area, so you put the finger in the trash can and then you just cancel the drawing. How about searching? So here, as you can see, it was just a simple searching um, interface. So you just type the name of the map you want to play, you find it, and then you play it. The problem is that it's not that intuitive, and you have to know the exact name, right? And other problems aside of the bad visual feedback. Another thing is here, as you can see, the information is kind of scattered. So in the middle, you have test, etc., etc., and you can play. And the left, more information, and the right, more actions to do. And this was not that great also because it's hard for you to know where are you looking, right? Your eyes are going like this. So in the new version, the first action I took was to add the quick search, which is basically you click the button, for example, Resin, and it will display all those maps from Resin to alt, or the same from most downloaded to less downloaded. So it's easier to find maps, right? If you don't know exact names. I also changed instead of cards like that, like one per one. Now it's listed from top to bottom, similar to Geometry Dash. And then here, instead of scattering the information to the right or to the left, well, to the left or to the right, now it's centered in the middle and with some extra information into the right, which are like important things you can do with the map. So now it's much better and easier to concentrate or where to watch, right? So, final reflections. Through this project, I didn't just transform the game, I transformed the way I make games. I learned that using techniques isn't enough. You need to know which technique, why, and when. For example, not fixing heuristic issues early made them show up again in the user tests, doubling the work. In the sense of heuristics is just you or a team applying a set of evaluation descriptions and check if that actually passes in your game, right? But if you don't fix the problems that you already identified, and then you put that to the real users, it's going to be repeated. So you get repeated information instead of new important information that you could have gotten, right? So here you can see the importance of knowing when to apply the different strategies. So here you can see the table with all the different techniques that I applied. I currently will say that I will change the score of a lot of them, in the sense that, of course, this was a project that I did some months ago, and there were a lot of mistakes and also things that I will change entirely, because it actually depends a lot of how you apply it, right? For example, scope and product vision, it's an 8, but just after finishing and completing the project, the more I keep working in order to close it, the more I use the scope, right? Because I started to check, okay, what was the scope? Okay, this was the scope, and here was the finish line. The more I use it, the more I was aware that how important it is to define a good scope and product vision. So, at the start, I set it 2 goals: to redesign Golf Ever with a user-centered approach, and evaluate whether game user research works for small projects. And now I can confidently say, yes, the game isn't just functional anymore. It's starting to connect with players. And with the right choices, even small teams can get huge value from Gore. This project has been like a plant, a seed, an idea, watered with data and iteration, guided with heuristics and feedback, and now still growing. And I believe this: it's not just a game, it's a proof that even a small project with a few hands but clarity and intention can grow, bloom, and have soul. Thank you very much.